Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and today we're talking about 5 more board games that left the SideGame library, and 5 replacements for those, as well as a little extra. Now that being said, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please make sure that you do. It is the best way to help us grow. But for those of you already subscribed, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate the support, and I hope that you're having a fantastic new year so far. Now that being said, let's go ahead and talk about some games. Now the first game I want to talk about here is 7 Wonders. Now this is the original 7 Wonders, and it's gone. Now I'm just going to tell you right off the bat that 7 Wonders is a fantastic game, and the original 7 Wonders does drafting in an excellent way. We're taking age after age. And the big reason that we got rid of this is we upgraded. We got the 2nd edition here in our library, and that's my replacement for it. And the reason that the 2nd edition I think is a fantastic improvement of the original is the layout of the cards. So let's just take a look at these 2 boards. First off, look at all of the information. It's on that top half of the cards, so you're really able to slide things into your board, and so it's not taking up as much space, whereas in the original, the names of the cards are very important for the links, so it was very important that you made sure that you kept those names visible. For example, if you have the university, you've got to make sure that you have it out there so you can link into the other things in the future ages. However, in the new edition, they take that idea and they replace it with symbols. So you have these cards that have these symbols, and those represent the new costs and the new linking. If you have people really concerned about maybe losing, hey, I need to know what this links into, there's actually a page in the rulebook that you leave. It's on the back, so it's really easy to get to. You leave it on the table, and that's going to have all of the trees, like the tech trees essentially, and that pretty much provides the same thing. Now, in addition to the card changes, there are also some updates and balance changes, and I've played 7 Wonders a lot, and they're actually pretty significant. It increases the potency and the power of some of the less powerful factions, and I do really like the new aesthetic of this 2nd edition. You have these fantastic foil finishes on the cards. The night and day sides look very clean and very nice, and I love that they've retained a lot of the art and they've kept those pictures big. I really like this new approach to the game. So they've adopted a lot of great changes from 7 Wonders Duel, brought them over here, as well as just cleaned up the system and balance some things. One that I'm still excited to play. So that is 7 Wonders 1st edition replaced by 7 Wonders 2nd edition. Still a fantastic game, but if you're out in the market for it, get the 2nd edition. Up next is One Deck Dungeon, a solo or cooperative dungeon crawl style game. We're going to be going from room to room, defeating creatures, and then using those creatures either to upgrade the dice you'll be rolling each challenge, your abilities for those challenges, or as XP in order to increase all your capacities on everything else. So you have some really cool choices when you defeat monsters, but the big reason that this is leaving is honestly, the early game of this is just so random and so luck dependent, and that permeates, all those failures permeate through the entire experience, and it's extremely frustrating and just not something pleasant to know that, hey, if you rolled badly those first couple of counters or you ripped some cards you just can't complete, you're kind of just SOL for the entire experience, and it can be very, very frustrating. This is one that generally, if you lose in those first couple of rounds, you're just sitting to yourself like, man, I'm playing this again not because I'm so excited and I want to play again. I'm playing again because I'm frustrated because of how it turned out. There's no failing forward in this game, and that luck is just so crushing with so little mitigation. Rolling poorly is a death sentence that you really cannot avoid, and it's really frustrating that it works that way. And the big thing here is that timer, the game itself, every round you have to spend time off the top of this deck, and the game just gets harder and harder the more of this time that you've spent. You're going to be going down levels of stairs, which is going to increase the challenges on the dice, so if they're going poorly, they're going to continue being poor. So really unfortunate, and the expansion here only added more difficulty to the game and no ways to mitigate those rolls early. So really frustrating and not an experience that I really want to go back to. However, I really like this idea, and our replacement game for this is actually the newest Kickstarter here. This is One Deck Galaxy. You can go ahead and go on the late pledge here, and super, super exciting here. I really think that this is a great step in the right direction. It takes the exact same idea. You have your character cards with that same level up system when you complete challenges. The big thing here is the star base, and that is going to drastically improve the game in my opinion, because it allows you to use poorly rolled dice, especially in that early game, in order to do new interesting things, as well as mitigate losses and prepare for future rounds. And I think that's fantastic. You actually have ways to use dice that are absolutely useless normally, and it's going to allow you to control the outcomes and fail forward, and I love that. cannot wait to see how this plays out in practice, and I'm really hoping that the Starbase is that solution for a fantastic idea of a game that I saw in One Deck Dungeon. So super excited to try One Deck Galaxy with this new Starbase, and let's go ahead and explore some planets with our Plumplims. Say that 3 times fast. So that's One Deck Dungeon replaced by its sequel, One Deck Galaxy. Our next game we're going to be talking about here is Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon, an exploration game by Awakened Realms that has you playing in an Arthurian setting. The narration in this game is fantastic, the writing is fantastic, I love the story of this game, I love the world that they've created, and my favorite part about this game has to be the combat and diplomacy card system. Whenever you face an encounter, you have this hand of cards that's custom to your character that you can upgrade over time, and you're going to be playing them in this cool timeline where you're matching these rows and activating special abilities based on the order you play them, and players can interweave the cards that they play, and it's such a cool concept. I'm not going to get into any spoilers here. However, all of that being said, the game itself is unfortunately very much work to me as well as the people that I've showed it to, and it's not one that we see ourselves ever going back to play. So I had a really good time learning the core mechanics and kind of going through the motions the first campaign as I started going through things, but that quickly faded away. It reminded me a lot of the Seventh Continent, where it does have that honeymoon period as you start exploring things and getting through mechanisms, but this game, unfortunately, is all about the grind. It's all about that incremental gaining experience after experience, because a lot of the times you are going to need experience in order to make sure that you're turning on some of the cards that you start off the game with. A lot of your cards will only be able to use their abilities if you have certain stats. Some challenges require you to have specific stat levels that you've reached, and the only way you're going to do that is through XP, and there's a limited amount of XP through the encounters that are provided to you in the game, so you have to find them through other means, and that means fishing for encounter cards and going from place to place all around the board and on this little map. Now, in addition to farming XP and magic, you also have to keep in mind all these other resources, your wealth, your food, because if you don't, it's going to cause you to decrease in health, and the cycle just perpetuates itself. And on top of that, kind of like in One Deck Dungeon, time is a huge factor here as well, with what are known as the menhirs, and the menhirs here are basically just large timers, and they're these giant statues that have these countdown clocks on them, and you have to make sure that you're continuously lighting them, especially in that initial setting. This does change based on the different campaign that you're playing, but those have their own issues when it comes to little tiny things that you're going to have to micromanage, whether it be the freezing in the second campaign or other aspects. So unfortunately, this game had a lot of grind, not really a lot of fun to be had when it came to the actual gameplay, and a lot of barriers to enjoying some really cool ideas in this system and story. So unfortunately, not one that was a good fit for our library, and one that will be leaving. But with that being said, we do have 2 replacements for this game that I want to mention. The first one is through Awakened Realms itself, and this is going to be Etherfields. This is my preferred version of this fantastic story narrative game that's still in this dark world with some really wonderful writing. The reason I like Etherfields a lot is the fact that its missions are contained into what are called dreams. They have you take a packet of cards that are all the same dream cards, you set them out, and that's the mission essentially. So it's kind of like these little puzzles that you're going to be going through that are tied through one large narrative. And the best part about this is if you find that the slumbers, which are the kind of the tethers that are going to lead you from dream to dream, are too grindy in themselves, there's a way to eliminate that, and I think that's fantastic. So you can keep that grind if that's something you enjoy, not something I really enjoy, but you can eliminate it completely using the Dreamwalker mode. So if you want this similar experience with self-contained missions and ways that you're actually going to be playing all your cards, fantastic. I recommend that you play as the, I believe it's called the Free Spirit, the blue character, or the Gambler if you're playing solo. The other character is a bit more specialist, so I do recommend that. But it's one that I really, really enjoy. That's Etherfields. But if you're looking for just a pure, amazing exploration game that has none of the grinding and all of the fun and the failing forward and just the constant excitement, this is going to be Sleeping Gods. This is my favorite campaign game, period. I think it's absolutely amazing. One of the best games from 2021. This has you playing with a fantastic story, fantastic writing, allows you to take on challenges, has some major difficulty to it, but also contains some really fun combo building and very interesting combat and challenge mechanisms. I really like the item system in this game, and it just has so much to explore and has you hitting the ground running as you just go wherever you want. There is nothing stopping you, but so much to explore and dive into. I'm not going to get into any spoilers, but I've done a lot of videos on this already. But if you haven't played Sleeping Gods, even if you're not getting rid of Tainted Grail, give it a try. Fantastic game. So that is Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon, being replaced by Etherfields, if you want something more in that style of dark, gritty adventure exploration, or from Sleeping Gods if you're looking for just a pure, incredible exploration campaign game. So, fantastic. The next game here that was replaced is The Crew, The Quest for Planet 9. This is a cooperative trick-taking game where you are going to be going through this logbook, and in the logbook it'll tell you what specific things that you need to do as players. Who needs to win specific tricks? Another cool way that they do this is they give you these little cards, and these little cards will represent cards in the big deck. So they have a mirror match, and you might have to deal one of those to each player, and each player has to win that specific card. You have this cool limited communication where you can only say a couple of things, and it's up to the players to puzzle out how to get these specific cards to the specific players. Now, this game is very solid. It's a good game. This is one that I will play if somebody has it, and if they recommend it, but it's not one that I'm going to ask to play. If there is going to be a game of this I do ask to play, though, that's our replacement, and I would recommend that you get this without a doubt over the original. This is The Crew Mission Deep Sea. So we've gotten rid of our old one, brought this one in. This does one small change to the game, and that is the use of how the missions are assigned, and that's through these little mission cards. So instead of having just a deck of, the exact same copies of those small cards, you have specific challenges that are tiered based on the player count and the difficulty level. And this is so well done. I love the way that they're dealt out at the beginning, how the players kind of have the agency to decide which missions they can go on, and I love how creative they are. Like this one, win all the 9s. You have so many cool things, and I'll leave them for you to explore because I do recommend this game. I do recommend The Crew Mission Deep Sea. I think it's fantastic, and I think that this is the way to play. So, fantastic one here. Make sure that if you are getting The Crew, you get Mission Deep Sea. The next game is The Game from Pandasaurus Games. This one has you playing cards from 1 to 100 or from 100 to 1, and you're doing this at the same time. So it's up to you to cooperatively lay these cards in a way that you're able to manage them and hopefully clear some so you can play them all from your hand. So you're taking your time as you are trying to deplete the entire deck of cards, and honestly, I think this game is really, really boring, and it's not one that I ever want to play because that's really it, and it's really frustrating when all you're doing is this very passive by the numbers play. There are plays, there are some decisions that feel a little tough, but I don't think that the payout is as rewarding as I would like. So there's no real hook for me to continue playing this, and I don't think the results are something that I'm willing to put in this large amount of time for. It has an extremely long play time for a game with such simple gameplay and simple objectives, and it's not one that I ever find myself wanting to go for. Now, if you're looking for a game that employs this mechanism of playing things in a specific order and sometimes having to break that order and making really big leaps and jumps, that is exciting. I would recommend the competitive version of this. This is called Ohanami, and it does this in a really cool way. And this is also by Pandasaurus Games, but it does this in a really fascinating way where the cards themselves, in addition to having numbers, they have point values, and these point values are going to score multiple times during the game. If you have one color, it's going to score 3 times, once every round, or you may have one color that just scores once but for more points. It's such an interesting concept because the values of these numbers are going to change throughout the game, which adds a cool level of prioritization to specific cards. In addition to that, you're still doing that specific ordering, so you have these cool interconnected pieces that add this tension that the original The Game was missing. So if you're looking for a competitive version of this, Ohanami, but if you're looking for, surprise, extra recommendation, a cooperative version that uses that play from 100 to 1, but in this case you're going from 1 to 100, I recommend The Mind. Now The Mind, it does something very similar. We are playing from top to bottom, but you're going to be doing this in a real-time sense and doing your best to try to psychically communicate and try to understand the pacing of the other players at the table. You're playing your cards from 1 to 100, and you're just having to kind of feel it out. It's a really interesting game about timing and cadence and understanding the players that you're with. It is such a fascinating experience, and I think it's one that everybody needs to try. And the funny thing is, you can actually play The Mind or The Game with the other deck because they both just use that deck of 100 cards. So I think that's kind of funny that both of them work the same way. So very fascinating game here, very, very fun cooperative system, and one that you definitely should give a try. So Ohanami for the competitive version, the Mind for the cooperative version, but both replacements for the game. Another one that did not stick in the library. And that's it. Those are the 5 games that left the SideGame library. I know there are a couple of cheats in there with games that are second editions or just new implementations, but I really do think that it's worth upgrading or getting rid of those old ones and getting the new ones, because the changes, however slight they may seem, are very critical to the gameplay, the flow, and really just the overall experience. But what did you think? What game do you think should not be in our library? I'll leave a link in the description below so you can take a look and make some criticisms, if you will. Do you agree with my picks? Do you agree with my substitutions? Are there any other games that you would suggest to play instead of the ones that I mentioned here? But that being said, thank you so much for watching SideGame Strong.